Marcus Lynn walked through the morning rush in worn-out jeans and a tattered coat. He blended in, another anonymous face in a city too busy to notice. No one gave the man with the scratched guitar case a second glance. That was the point. He had power, influence, a top-floor office overlooking the skyline. But none of that mattered now. Today, he wasn't CEO Marcus Lynn. He was just a man with nothing, waiting to see who would stop, who would notice, who would care. For years, Marcus had watched people climb toward him, smiling too wide, laughing too hard, speaking too much. Everyone wanted something. No one wanted him. Not the quiet thinker behind the empire. Not the man who stayed late to write personal notes to junior staff. Not the one who remembered birthdays of every janitor in the building. He wanted to believe there were still people who saw value without a title, who noticed what others missed. So when his closest friend dared him to go on a blind date dressed like a beggar, Marcus didn't hesitate. The plan was simple. Go as no one, meet a stranger, and find out if authenticity could still break through assumptions. Emily Zhao was on the edge of exhaustion, of burnout, of giving up. Working 6 days a week at a cramped neighborhood bookstore, she spent every other waking moment caring for her mother. Medication bills were piling up, and no amount of budgeting stretched far enough. But Emily didn't complain. She never had. She believed in the quiet strength of ordinary people. Her kindness was reflexive. She greeted bus drivers by name, stayed late to help elderly customers find their favorite titles, and remembered the regular who liked his books wrapped in brown paper. None of it made her rich, but it made her feel useful. Her coworkers signed her up for a blind date on a lark. "You never go out," they teased. "Maybe it's time someone noticed you." She didn't expect anything. Certainly not someone who looked like he hadn't eaten in days. When she first saw Marcus outside the cafe, she didn't recognize him as her date. Just a man slumped on a bench, fiddling with a broken guitar string. There was something in his eyes, tired, alert, unsure. He didn't ask for money. Didn't look up. Still, she walked over and handed him the last few coins in her coat pocket. "Get something warm," she said softly. Marcus mumbled a thank you, fingers closing gently around the coins. She left it at that and went inside to wait. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then the door opened. The man from outside shuffled in, clutching the guitar case. He glanced around and walked straight toward her. "Emily?" he asked. She blinked. "Yes. I think. I'm your date." Silence stretched between them. Emily glanced at his clothes, then back at his face. He was clean-shaven, smelled of nothing in particular, and despite the torn sleeves, his posture was unervingly straight. Something wasn't adding up. But she didn't flinch. "All right," she said. "I'm listening." They sat. He spoke little. She filled the gaps with observations, soft laughter, and a quiet curiosity that never crossed into judgment. He watched her as much as she watched him, how she sipped her tea, how she offered half her sandwich without hesitation, how she noticed when the waitress looked stressed and left a bigger tip than she could afford. Every instinct told him she was different, not because she gave him money, but because she never asked for anything in return. She spoke about her mother, about the joy of matching books to people, about how some customers just needed to be heard. She noticed details most ignored, how his left shoulder seemed stiff, how his fingers were calloused in patterns inconsistent with a life on the street. "You're not just a musician," she said suddenly. He froze. "Why do you say that?" "You listen like someone who's used to being the smartest in the room but hates showing it." Marcus smiled, small, involuntary, the first real one in days. He didn't answer. And she didn't push. By the time they left the cafe, night had fallen. She walked him to the corner, offering him a scarf from her bag. "It's old," she said, "but warm." He took it, stunned. "You don't know me," he said quietly. "I know enough," she replied. As she disappeared down the street, Marcus stood frozen in place, the scarf heavy in his hand. He came looking for someone who saw past appearances. He found someone who never cared about them to begin with. Marcus arrived late. Not by mistake, but to see what she would do. She'd been waiting, calm, not angry, sipping tea, watching the world without judgment. That told him enough. He took the seat across from her, still in character, still pretending. "Sorry," he muttered. She shrugged. "You made it." No accusation. No frustration. Just acceptance. The kind that wasn't blind but chose to withhold judgment. She looked directly at him, not through him. They talked. Slowly at first. He kept his answers short, vague. She never pressed. Instead, she asked about music, about what he liked to read, about silence. She wasn't trying to fill space. She was trying to understand. Marcus listened. Carefully. She wasn't trying to impress. She never brought up money, jobs, expectations. She spoke about how customers at her bookstore told her their life stories while browsing shelves. How the ones who were quiet usually had the loudest past. She asked questions that weren't surface level. "What do you believe people regret most?" He said nothing. She nodded like that was an answer too. He noticed the way she looked around, subtle glances to the waitress being yelled at by another table. Emily slipped a note onto their tray before leaving. Likely an extra tip. Probably money she didn't have. Marcus tested her. Spoke about failure. About being dismissed. About not being seen. She didn't pity him. She respected it. There was no savior complex, just curiosity. She noticed his hands. "You don't have the hands of someone who begs," she said flatly. He froze. "You move like someone used to authority," she added. "But you're hiding it." Still, no accusation. Just facts. Observations. Marcus changed the subject. She let him. Outside, his assistant was spinning lies. Emails were disappearing. Financial records were misfiled. A confidential blueprint had leaked to a rival. Marcus had been watching quietly, gathering evidence. But now, distracted by a girl who asked better questions than his board of directors, he was slipping. He had planned to wrap the date quickly. Maybe walk away with a name, a thought. But this wasn't going according to script. She wasn't reacting. She was noticing. She was the only one who saw him in years. But every moment he stayed in character, the guilt tightened. She was real. Honest. Open. And he was lying. The conversation shifted. She talked about the bookstore. About her mom's medical bills. About being tired all the time. But she didn't sound bitter. Just factual. He asked, "Why give your last coins to a stranger?" She shrugged. "Because you needed it more." Simple. She didn't know he had 8 figures in the bank. That he was testing her. That she was passing a test she didn't know existed. And now it didn't feel like a test anymore. He walked her home. She asked nothing of him. Didn't offer to see him again. Just said, "Take care," and meant it. Marcus stood alone afterward, rattled. The girl he thought he was testing had flipped the script. She'd seen everything, and still chose kindness. She didn't call. Didn't message. He waited. 3 days passed. Then 4. Marcus sat behind his desk, no disguise now, staring at numbers that used to matter. Profits up. Engagement steady. But beneath the surface, things were slipping. His assistant, once trusted, had gone quiet at all the wrong moments. Key files disappeared. A prototype leaked to a competitor that shouldn't have known it existed. He started digging. Quietly. No confrontation. Just patterns. Password logs. Printer records. Late-night security footage. The trail led back to the assistant, and to someone else he had once considered a friend. It was clean, calculated. He almost respected the execution. Almost. But he had bigger distractions. Emily. The only person who made him forget titles and stakes. When he finally showed up at the bookstore, she didn't smile. Just looked at him. Calm, unreadable. "You lied," she said. "Yes." She nodded. "Why?" "To see if you were real." "You could have just asked." There was nothing theatrical in her disappointment. No drama. Just hurt. You weren't testing me, she said. You were hiding. He had no defense. She didn't wait for one. You knew I had nothing, she added. And you still chose control. Then she turned and walked back inside. Marcus didn't chase her. He couldn't. Not yet. Back at the office, he launched a quiet investigation. No memos. No accusations. He worked late, reviewed every transfer, every meeting log. He spoke to people no one noticed. Junior analysts, night shift security, interns. They had seen things. Glitches. Suspicious edits. Names on files that didn't belong. Piece by piece, the puzzle built itself. His assistant had been feeding data to a rival startup for months. The final blow would have been delivered this quarter. A planned sabotage during a key investor meeting. Marcus didn't blow up. He documented. Dated. Verified. He met with board members individually. Shared only what they needed to see. Clean, precise. No spin. No emotion. Let the facts do the talking. The ones who ignored him before, the loud executives, the posturing partners, now listened. Because while they were grandstanding, he had been watching. Quiet didn't mean weak. Emily stayed silent. No calls. No texts. He respected it. But he kept thinking about her scarf. Her questions. The way she didn't flinch when everything looked wrong. She had seen him when he wasn't trying to be seen. And he had failed to do the same for her. The next move had to be different. Not grand. Just honest. Marcus called an emergency board meeting. No theatrics. Just documents. Timelines. Facts. He laid it all out. Unauthorized access, shadow files, planted misinformation. Names. Date. Evidence. His assistant turned pale. The board watched in silence. No anger. No raised voice. Just control. When he finished, he looked around the table. You missed it, he said. Because you weren't paying attention to the quiet. No one argued. They didn't need to. The betrayal was clear, the cleanup underway. But Marcus didn't feel victory. Just relief. The next day, he walked into the bookstore and waited in line like everyone else. When it was his turn, he placed a small frame on the counter. Inside were the 3 coins she gave him and a note. Your kindness changed everything. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at the frame, then at him. The hurt had softened, but not disappeared. He spoke plainly. I didn't deserve it. Any of it. I didn't do it for you, she said. I know. He paused. But I needed it. She nodded. So what now? No more lies, he said. No test. Just truth. He asked for coffee. She said yes. They sat again. No disguises. No games. He told her everything. Why he did it, how he watched people forget what mattered, how she reminded him. She listened. Didn't forgive him right away. But she didn't walk away either. That was enough. Weeks later, they launched a pilot program. Tech and literacy for underprivileged youth. He funded it. She ran it. Quiet work. No headlines. Just progress. At the opening event, he played guitar for the first time in years. Real music. No act. She stood beside him, arms crossed, smiling without saying much. He didn't need more. The people who once overlooked him now listened. The ones who once ignored her now followed. They didn't demand respect. They earned it. By noticing what others didn't. By staying real when it was easier to pretend. By never raising their voices, just raising their standards.